The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. He was a husband, a father, and 31-year veteran of the Houston Police Department. Senior Officer William Jeffrey was shot and killed while serving a warrant against a wanted fugitive out on bond. Another officer, Sergeant Michael Vance, was also shot and is recovering in the hospital. The shooter they were serving a warrant on, Deon Ledette, was shot and killed by the officers as well. We talked with some law enforcement experts for their reaction tonight.
And our guests are here on The Factor Uncensored tonight. A tough day in the city of Houston. Joining us here on The Factor is Doug Griffith, who's the current president of HPOU, the Houston Police Officers Union. Doug, tough day today. Tragic day in the city of Houston. What's the latest? What do we know in this case?
Yes, sir. We got the call early this morning, and our officers have been shot. And shortly thereafter, we were advised that our sergeant did not make it, Sergeant Jeffries, and that officer, our sergeant, the other sergeant was in the hospital in surgery. And sadly, again, it's another case where we have an offender that should never have been on the streets that took this officer's life.
Chief McClellan, former HPD chief, obviously you've been through this before. This is a very tough time. What is it like for a police chief to lose an officer on the streets like this?
Well, I can tell you, Isaiah, thank you for having me. It is a tough day, and certainly I want to say that my thoughts and prayers go out to both officers' family. I certainly understand the tough job that Chief Fenner has. I've been in that position. And when you're getting ready to meet someone's spouse and their kids and their loved ones and have to break the heartbreaking news to them that they were killed in the line of duty, there's really no script for it. But it's the toughest day that I've ever had while I was police chief, and I had to do it 3 times. So I certainly understand what Chief Fenner and the Houston Police Department is going through. It is tough. But to echo what Doug just said, we not only need to look at police reform. When people talk about criminal justice reform, they mainly refer to the police. But there's a lot of other parts. Prosecutors, parole, probation, the courts, corrections. And I'm gonna tell you, as many folks that are out here right now that are violent felons with open warrants, with multiple bonds, walking the streets freely, they're still threatening our community. There's a lot of judges got blood on their hands.
Amen.
Chief Dodson, let's hear from you, former executive chief, assistant chief at HPD. Your thoughts on this situation? Obviously, a lot to unpack here, including those offenders, violent offenders, who are still out on the streets of Houston.
Well, I feel the same way that Doug and Chief McClellan have expressed in their concerns, and I too want to express my prayers to the officer's family and also to the victim's family. Unfortunately, we've got many families that are grieving tonight. The HPD family and the family of law enforcement is grieving as a whole. None of us signed up to go and lose our lives, but we signed up to know that that's a possibility. And when we put on that uniform each and every day, we hope to come back home to our families. But there may not be the chance that we will do that. And I'm sure when Officer Jeffrey, Sergeant Vance went to serve that warrant, their mindset was to go to do the best job they could to protect the citizens of Houston, knowing that there's a high possibility that they may not come back. And they made the ultimate sacrifice.
And Charles, let's take a look at this suspect, Deon Ledette, who has had quite a long criminal record dating, I think, back to 2008, if I'm correct on that.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, Mr. Ledette was arrested 10 months ago for distribution of methamphetamine The Kim Ogg's office actually asked for a no bond, which is rare in a drug distribution case. And the request was made because of his lengthy history that included multiple aggravated assaults. He's a monster. They asked for a no bond. They were given a $40,000 bond that was then cut to $20,000. And he immediately failed to comply. He was supposed to go and get an ankle monitor. He never showed up. And he's been in the wind for almost 10 months. Officer Jeffrey and Sergeant Vance, they sign up for this major offenders task force, and it's one of the most dangerous law enforcement jobs in Houston. And they serve faithfully. It's dangerous every day, every time they serve a warrant. There's nobody that's served as a police officer in our Harris County law enforcement community that doesn't know someone that was killed in the line of duty. I'm heartbroken for his wife, who is a recent retiree, and his child. It's a tragedy. And when I see these officers who risk their lives to catch the real monsters of the world, you can't reconcile that with this modern American narrative of ACAB or defund the police or abolish policing because of these monsters. And we need these heroes that step up. And I am one to always criticize law enforcement when I think criticism is due. I have argued for paradigmatic change in this law enforcement community after serving as an officer and serving on the board of the Houston Police Foundation. But damn it, I'm just tired, Isaiah. I'm damn tired of this constant condemnation of public servants because we need to stop being naive and we need to stop forgetting that there are monsters like Lede out there looking to kill people, to rob people, to take from people, and they need to be under the damn prison.
Still to come here on The Factor, former Chief McClellan discusses the dangers of these warrant knocks for officers, something officers do often in their career, plus more calls from our panel for holding Harris County judges responsible. We'll pick back up after the break. Stay with us. And welcome back. Tonight, we are talking to law enforcement professionals reacting to the death of a 31-year veteran of the Houston Police Department killed in the line of duty. We wrap up with our panel pleading for bond reform here in this country and right here in Harris County.
Chief, let's bring you back into this conversation. When you ring that doorbell, when you're serving a warrant, when you make that police stop, you just never know.
No, you don't. And I have a good real life experience of what that's like. I remember back in the early 1980s, I was a new sergeant and I was in charge of a squad of officers and we had to run a warrant on a murder suspect. And I hesitated to assign someone who would enter the door first. We were going to forcibly enter the house. And of course, my squad knew it. They knew that I was hesitating because I wanted someone to just volunteer for that job. So after a few minutes, the smallest guy in the squad volunteered and said, "Sergeant, I'll be the point man. I'll go through the door first." He handed me his badge and his ID. And he said, "If I don't make it out alive, please tell my wife and kids I did the best I could."
Wow.
Now, that's the kind of bravery you have that these men and women in law enforcement display every single day. They discard their own peril to try to keep their communities safe.
Doug, obviously, the public, we don't hear stories like that. And there are heroes out there. How important is it to remember Officer Jeffrey and pray for Sergeant Vance, who's still in the hospital at this time? And what can the community do at this point, Doug?
First, let me say the community's been great. The outpouring of support is always phenomenal from the citizens of Houston. We have Assist the Officer. There's a button on there you can go and you can donate money to either one of those officers. 100% of the proceeds go to those officers. But let me tell you something. We've got to start looking at our community as a whole and start voting some of these judges out of their positions. Judge Glass of the 208 District Court needs to answer up for why this guy was ever out on a bond. As Charles said, it should have never happened. For the DA's office to say that he should have been no bonded, and not only did they not keep him at the $65,000 original, but they lower it, it's asinine. This guy was a predator to our community, and we see this over and over again. We've had over 135 people murdered by people out on multiple bonds. When is it going to stop? When are we going to stand up as a community and say, this ain't right? We got to put a stop to it, and we got to hold these judges accountable. Right now, they're accountable to no one. They have absolute immunity. Absolute immunity.
Charles, you have served as a judge and as a police officer. Do the judges in Harris County that we're looking at now feel like they are accountable to no one but during the election process?
Well, we had a real need for misdemeanor bond reform in Harris County. We had people that were often forced to take a plea bargain because they didn't have a mechanism for getting out of jail for low-level offenses, right? But it then went on to result in this revolving door in felony courts. Now, judges are ultimately responsible. They're responsible to the electorate. The problem is in Harris County, what we have is people that just flip, it's all Democrat, all Republican, and we sweep in good judges and we sweep in bad judges, and we sweep out good judges and sweep out bad judges. And it's really not the best way to select who is making these decisions. And oftentimes now we have a lot of people, used to be successful attorneys at the twilight of a career would run for judge because they were the ones that were supposed to be doing it. And now oftentimes you have people looking for a pay raise by becoming a politician. It's been hyper politicized, both parties, right? I mean, we do have accountability. We did have a district attorney's office that asked for a no bond. I think we need to rethink felony bonds here in Harris County.
Our thoughts and prayers are with both the Jeffrey and Vance families. Ahead here on the